Salesforce reported its Q3 fiscal 26 earnings just the other night. And I'm going to get into the numbers, the usual, right? Revenue, subscription support revenue, the CRPO numbers, how they did in each one of their clouds. But ultimately, it's going to come down to, and you all know this, Agentforce, Data Cloud, or now Data 360, and how they're performing, what they're saying to the market about that performance, and more importantly, what are they saying to the market? What are they saying to the financial community as to how they're going to start accelerating their revenue? In other words, how are they going to get you, the customer, to spend more money, accelerating that revenue? So let's get into those numbers. If you think about total revenue, let's start there, 10.3 billion, up about 9%. That's pretty much in line with what was expected from the financial community. It was a slight beat, I guess, when you think about what they forecasted, thinking coming in around 10.24 billion to 10.929 billion. There's obviously some rounding there. I'm not going to get into the specifics, but essentially they came in where they were expecting to come in. From a subscription and support revenue, 9.7 billion of that is of the 10.3 billion, right? That's the majority of their revenue comes from that space. That revenue was up 9%. Professional services about 600K. That's an area we've talked about this where they're trying to get more deals to include professional services. A lot of that has to do with, yes, the revenue, but it also has to do with getting stickiness, getting resources in and learning. I'm not going to spend too much time on that, but that's something to be paying attention to. Let's talk about those clouds. Now, first and foremost, I can't skip this. Benioff said it, and now it's official. So everything, Sales Cloud, Marketing Cloud, Commerce Cloud, you name it, is now Agentforce Sales Cloud, Agentforce Marketing Cloud. So it's pretty cute, pretty fun, I guess. Now, a lot of this has to do with the fact that they talk about the embedding of Agentforce into everything. So I'm not going to try to minimize that. But the fact of the matter is, there's a little bit of a branding exercise going on here. For now, and it's going to take me a little time, I'm still going to call it Sales Cloud. I'm still going to call it Marketing Cloud. I hope all of you will understand why. Sales Cloud, 2.3 billion, up 8%. Last Q3, there were growth there was 11%. Service Cloud, 2.5 billion, up 8% as well. Last Q3, they had 10% growth. So slowing growth on two core clouds of theirs. 360 Platform, Slack, and Other, which used to just be Platform and Other. That's 2.2 billion, up 19%. Marketing and Commerce Cloud, 1.4 billion, but 1% growth. 8% growth last Q3. This is something we've been talking about. Many of you are listening here. Marketing Cloud, Commerce Cloud, highly competitive environments. There's a lot of customers that are evaluating, considering moves, whether it's Shopify or whether it's HubSpot, doesn't matter. The point is, they're susceptible here, and the growth numbers at 1% clearly show that. Integration and analytics, 1.4 billion, that includes Tableau and MuleSoft. The growth there was 6%, it was 5% last Q3, so relatively flat. Now, here's the key. Let's get into the Agentforce, let's get into the Data Cloud, let's get into those pieces of this, okay? So Agentforce and Data, annual reoccurring revenue, the ARR, 1.4 billion. That's up 114%. Agentforce specifically, the ARR is about 540 million. That's up 330%. So again, you got to look at those numbers, those growth percentages, put them with a grain of salt. Obviously, the window of time is pretty small since they've been pushing these deals. Also look at the total dollar amount. So Agentforce, not minimizing $540 million, but putting that in perspective. And when you think about the fact that they say they have 18,500 Agentforce deals since launch of Agentforce, the fact that 9,500 are paying customers, you can back into some of that math. The paying customer number, I would want to call out the fact that they did grow that 50% quarter over quarter. So there's some momentum there. I would also tell you that, again, paying is a little deceptive. How much are they paying? How is it buried into it? A lot of these customers, when they give the Agentforce adoption, even if it's a smaller dollar amount, obviously that funnels into this pool, paid and otherwise. Another key thing, this is critically important because Benioff and Washington and even Milano talked about this, the flywheel effect, which I'm going to get to those quotes in a minute. 50% of new Agentforce bookings came from existing customers expanding. This is the whole idea that there are consumption-based licensing models. And as you start, if you do not have your contracts structured the right way, and Salesforce is counting on this, as you grow, as the wheel spins, your revenue for them rather goes up, your spend goes up. And if you don't negotiate this correctly, this is what they're going to be relying on. And I'll call out its very specific quote in a second. Data Cloud also, or Data 360, 50% of that bookings came from existing customer expansion in their investments. So that's critically important. The other thing I wanted to call out is the production, right? So customers in production with Agentforce has grown 70% quarter over quarter. So that just simply means usage of Agentforce, going from kind of piloting, testing to kind of utilizing. Now, are they getting a full OR? Are they getting the expected benefit? They're not going to report that. My suspicion here is production doesn't mean those things. In fact, it likely doesn't. Now, let's talk a little bit about the quotes, right? Number one, if you think about Salesforce, you think about Benioff, you think about Washington Milano, they're obviously talking to the financial community when they're having these calls. What they say is very important. They all talk about consumption and flywheel. Benioff, the consumption flywheel is gaining traction, and we're very focused on adoption more than ever before, especially Agentforce. Washington, our consumption flywheel is spinning. Our top priority is accelerating Agentforce and Data Cloud 360 adoption. We remain on track to re-accelerate our revenue in 12 to 18 months. Building and fueled by Agentforce. So adoption. So they need you to start tasting and using. Start. And then they're going to use that to get the flywheel going to drive their revenue. They're saying it right here. So before you make commitments, before any kind, any level, have everything clearly defined. I've been saying this. Definitions. What is an action? What is a conversation, depending on model? How does the flex credit structure work? If they're pushing an AELA, which Benioff talked about, Milano talked about, what are the pros? What are the cons? What type of transparency? What type of swap rights? What do I get for volume discounts? Again, regardless of AELA, you should have transparency in the volume discounting. You start using and clipping through your credits. What happens to your pricing? What type of volume tiers am I going to get? You have to have this locked down now, because trust me, the playbook they're running on you is to get you in, get it spinning, and make more money, which you're not expecting, and then have you beholden and trapped to that scenario, which will accelerate their growth. Now, when you think about guidance, depending on how you look at this, they reported with Informatica and without, but essentially they're still saying it's going to be relatively narrowed or what they expected, single-digit growth, high single digits. So what that means is right now, as you sign these deals, they have air cover. But they're setting you up, all you customers, to continue to make more money off of you during your next term. Do your deals right now, because you cannot afford to have to try to correct things midterm.